prospect season is finally upon us. And I say finally because, the 2023 draft just wrapped up like a month ago, but we're right into the 2024 draft, baby. This is the SIG Podcast, Recruits Draftcast. Let's go.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the SIG Podcast. Recruits Draftcast.
And with the first overall selection in the 2023 NHL Draft, the Chicago Blackhawks are very proud to select from the Regina Pats, the Western Hockey League, Connor Bedard.
The sickest NHL draft and scouting podcast. It's gonna be sick.
I'm producer Shane. This is Grant McCagg. You already know him. Come on. This is why you're watching, right? Your prospect knowledge is unparalleled. Maybe the people are watching because of your striking good looks, Grant. That's also a valid reason. But we will be talking prospects today. And the timing is perfect because the Alinka Gretzky Cup just wrapped up. Lots to talk about. So let's jump right into it. Grant, give me your names. Who are some names people should remember heading into the 2024 draft that really showed out here at the Alinka Gretzky?
Well, there was a bunch. There might be 10 to 15 prospects at least that end up being first rounders. Typically, there's guys that, last year at this time, there were Richie and Allen and Braden Yeager all looked, a lot of people had them top 10 on their lists. Things change,
they fell.
So, you can, this is with asterisk, obviously, but certainly there were a bunch of guys that I wasn't really aware of. Mm-hmm. Like a player like Wallenius, for instance, defenseman in Sweden, I didn't really know much about. Ended up being really impressed with him, with his skating ability, and he might be a top 15, top 20 prospect that I hadn't really heard of going in. Caden Lindstrom was a kid that I thought really impressed. Didn't put up big numbers, but you have to love his overall package, his tools. Dickinson was pretty solid on defense. I thought Berkeley Catton lived up to his billing, wore the C and led the team to gold medals. So you had to be impressed with him for sure. Trevor Connolly, I thought, was by far the Americans' top player, and certainly moved himself into the top 10 mix. So those are guys that just off the top of your head just kind of come to mind.
Yeah, that's it. Berkeley Catton, like you mentioned, finished the tournament as the point leader with 11 points. But Trevor Connolly, wow, eight points in the tournament, by far the best player on the U.S. team. And, before we get into further names, why was there another prospect tournament going on at the same time, right? The World Junior Summer Showcase was at the exact same time as the Alinka Gretzky. So we're looking at two different things, and the Summer Showcase wasn't even broadcasted. So that grinds my gears, honestly, because there's some really good high-end players of the 2024 draft that were in that tournament instead of being in the Alinka Gretzky. So we're looking at two different things at the same time. It doesn't add up. We didn't have Cole Iserman in this tournament. We didn't have Cole Hudson, two Coles. Aaron Kiviharju wasn't in Alinka Gretzky either. So that dynamic was weird to me. Do you have an answer to that? Like, why did they do that?
Yeah, well, typically, before, when Canada was involved, they'd have them at a different time. But the kids that were good enough to play in the Summer Showcase that were also eligible for Alinka weren't. Even if it is spaced apart, it's either one or the other that they play in. They want to have a look. I get it for the kids that they want to have the best look at the guys that they think will probably be on the team, on their World Junior team in the winter. So I get it that guys like Iserman, Kiviharju play for their under 20 teams in those tournaments. But yeah, I don't understand why they have it at the same time. I don't understand why, they call it a showcase. And then you have to pay about $20 a game to watch it online. It's the only way. I mean, the Instat, which is the service I use, doesn't even have the games up. Like, I can't even look at the shifts from the kids that played in that. I mean, you can see them play any other thing, but the showcase, the thing that's what we're all supposed to, get an idea of these guys from. The only people that know are ones that paid way too much for a web service or showed up at the games. So it was very disappointing that hopefully Canada gets back into this, because when Canada was playing in this showcase, TSN showed all the games pretty much, and it was at a different time than the link. It was kind of back to back, and it was great because you got to look at kids that are good enough to play in the World Junior this coming year, as well as all the kids that are draft eligible for the next draft.
That's it. No, I that really perplexed me, for lack of a better word. I was really confused as to this situation, but regardless, we had a great tournament to watch. Lots happened at the Linka Gretzky. And before we get into the rest of the 2024 class, quickly, we need to touch on the 2025 because there is some elite talent already dominating this tournament. Michael Misa, likely the first overall pick, but Adam Benak needs to be highlighted here. He finished the tournament with 6 assists. He was among the top point getters in the tournament at 16 years old, undersized. I mean, the projection for this kid is going to be insane in a few years, right?
Oh, he's really dynamic, smart player. The guy that I ended up probably the most impressed with was Malcolm Spence. I just thought
golden goal. Golden goal.
Well, just the whole tournament. He was nobody forechecked as hard as him. Excellent on the cycle. Great motor, good size, smart. He's got all the tools. I thought he outplayed Misa in the tournament, to be honest with you. Not saying that he's going to, go ahead of him in the draft, but and McQueen as well. Big kid that could be a top 2 center with size and skill. All of those guys definitely impressed, and it's always a couple of years ahead of time. You always get excited about the draft that's 2 years away, and
that's it.
It's even like this one. It's funny, Montreal Canadiens fans kind of were critical of Montreal taking a defenseman at 5th overall because there's supposed to be so many great ones in this draft. And if there was a takeaway that I had from the tournament, was that some of the defensemen that were so hyped going in maybe aren't quite as good as build. So, like a kid like Parekh, he's got a lot of work to do defensively. He's going to have to learn that he can't be a rover at the NHL level. That's for sure. Maybe you can get away with it in junior to a certain extent, but he'll have to be reined in a lot before they'll even let him play in an NHL game, because NHL coaches are pretty picky about that. But certainly he has great feet and great power play skills, and I mean he'll go in the top 20 regardless, I would think, because of that those offensive skills. But lists that maybe had him as a top 10 lock, I think at this point there's got to be at least some concern with his defensive play. So and Jiricek was okay, but he didn't look any more dynamic than Reinbacher, for instance. I wouldn't say, oh well, they should have waited a year and taken Jiricek, because as far as I'm concerned, Reinbacher is every bit as good as any of the defensemen that we saw at that tournament.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. None really kind of stood out in a big way to me, but you know what? That's the beauty of scouting season. things change throughout the season. Your rankings are going to change. Your opinions are going to change. When we get to June 2024, I believe it's in Vegas this year, our opinions will have changed dramatically. So
Yes.
stay tuned, because we'll be breaking down everything prospect related throughout the season. Okay, so subscribe, ring the bell, get the notifications. We're on top of it. This is your one-stop shop for everything prospect. Okay. Now, Grant, was there a player in the Linka Gretzky that kind of flew under the radar? Not many people were talking about, but you were like, oh, this kid might be something, right? You mentioned Wallenius. Was there any other one player that stood out?
Yeah, there were a bunch that were, that, like I said, I didn't really know that much about going in, but I'd have to say Gabriel. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce his last name, Eliasson or Eliasson, the 6'5" Swedish defenseman. He's a beast. He
massive.
He clears the front of the net like nobody's business. I haven't seen a Swedish defenseman with his jam since probably Ulf Samuelsson, going back. But and he's September 9th, I think, is his birthday.
Barely made it. Yeah.
Well, he's he's not even 17 yet, and he was the strongest. He was the toughest kid out there as far as clearing the front of the net and along the boards, and he's got a nasty streak, but he could also skate. He was paired with Wallenius for most of the tournament, and I thought they were Sweden's best pair. There's probably not a lot of offensive upside there, but anyone looking for a big, mean, mobile, shutdown defenseman is going to be after, by 20 in the draft. There's always teams looking for that shutdown guy that can play top 4 minutes. And this guy never played in a U17 event or never played for Sweden before.
Wow.
And so you like to see guys that are on the high improvement curve. And for me, he's one guy for sure that I was not aware of going in that could just keep climbing as the draft year goes on.
Jeez, 6'5" at 16 years old, still room to grow. That's exciting, As much as we like to preach, don't put too much stock into the size of a player, right? We look at Caulfield, we look at Hudson. These are smaller players that will pan out. But 6'5", 16-year-old defenseman is something to salivate about. A guy that stood out to me that I noticed, because you sent me your top 40, guys that are in your top 40 that were at the Linka Gretzky. But one guy that was missing and that really stood out to me was Tuomas Suoniemi. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, guys. I'm sorry. But the Finland player finished third in scoring with 8 points. I thought was fantastic. Where do you project him? Because he's not in your top 40. So where would he go, do you think?
Well, it's, it gets back to size, is he better than, let's say, kid that got drafted out of Kelowna last year, Crystal, sorry.
Yeah, Andrew Crystal.
Unfortunately, and we see it in the playoff time, you need, there aren't many smaller guys that play top 6 roles. In the NHL. I like the kid. Obviously, you like kids that produce at the Linka Gretzky, but we've seen a lot of guys that finished top 5 in scoring that were undersized that never got a sniff in the NHL. Certainly none of my scouting friends, when I asked them, which guys impressed you on Finland, none of them mentioned this kid, and it gets back to size. You can impress in a tournament where there's 16, 17-year-olds, but are you going to be able to duplicate that at the NHL level? We'll see. He definitely, he's a guy that's in my second round mix now, who wasn't there before, and if he keeps producing all year, shows that he can go to the inside, play a gritty style at his size, he'll climb up into the first round. So, that's a great thing about this tournament is that there's kids like that you identify and you make sure that you keep an eye on. And
exactly.
I mean, finishing top 3 in scoring, that doesn't hurt him at all, for sure.
No, for sure. Another guy too on the U.S. team that I noticed was Will Zellers. Again, high points, right? But a lot of penalty trouble. I noticed was his guy was always in the penalty box. Maybe a few defensive woes as well. But where do you situate Will Zellers? Where is he in your ranking?
So you only want to talk about guys that weren't on my list, or what?
For now.
Okay, all right, because we don't have 3 hours here. So,
no.
I like Zellers too, actually, and I sent guys to my NHL scouting friends. I sent his name to a few of them and said, do you see him as a top 40 guy? Because I'm like you, he impressed me, and I thought maybe he's the top 40, and none of them. I sent 5 or 6 guys that I thought were on the bubble as top 40 guys, and he was one of them. And none of them said that they thought he was top 40. So I didn't leave. I take into account they're at the games live, right? And they're getting paid the big bucks to do this. So I put a lot of stock into their opinions. But if I don't have him in my top 40, certainly he's going to be 40 to 50, because I like you, I was impressed. He was always noticeable.
Yeah,
he scored some big goals. Plays with a bit of an edge. Size is decent. He's a guy that, like you, I think had a good tournament, and I'm going to keep a really close eye on this year.
Yeah, for sure. Now we're going to get into your list now, because Trevor Connolly rose up like a rocket. He was just, of every situation, he was noticeable every single shift. Now you found some interesting things about Connolly, but I think we should clear that up right now, right? Because it's nothing to be too concerned about, right?
Well, I mean, teams are concerned about it, but he's going to have to keep his nose clean, that's for sure. Much like Logan Mailloux since his incident, although not at the same level, but he did a stupid thing when he was like just turning 16. A teammate who is actually Jewish, which made it kind of even odder, fashioned some sort of a homemade swastika in front of him out of some stuff, and posed in front of it, and Connolly took a picture of it and said something and posted it on his Instagram, and they were both trying to be funny, I guess, and being kids and silly or whatever, but it was it kind of blew up. People got a hold of it and reposted it, and it got out there in social media pretty strong, even though he intended it only to go to his own followers, I guess, on Instagram, but it was taken down pretty quickly, and he was told why it's not something that you can make light of and make fun of. And he's done a lot of stuff since and has been quite contrite about it. He's coaching an under 14 all black team this summer. It's people of color. I forget exactly but anyways, he's got involved in that. He's done some community service work. He's studied the Holocaust and has a lot better idea of what exactly that was all about, and that you don't make fun of what happened in any regard. No. And I think he's learned his lesson. U.S. Hockey did a major vetting before they let him play in the Hlinka, make sure that he had done all of the things that he said he'd do. And Providence College as well has committed to him joining the team next year. And I talked to their coach, Nate Lehman, and he's quite satisfied that the kids, he made a mistake and really is really remorseful about it and has done nothing but attempt to rectify that by being a good citizen. So, we tend to, in this cancel culture age, we tend to be a little too quick to pull the trigger on kids. But I mean, you can't deny the kid a career based on a. I mean, if every stupid mistake I made when I was 15, 16 got, publicized like that did, I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now probably. So, I think I've moved on with Logan Mailloux, and I think that he's done the right things ever since. And I think he should play in the NHL. So I can't think any differently with Connolly. In fact, I think it wasn't as injurious. No. It didn't harm anybody directly like what Logan did. So I think we move on from it. And, obviously teams are going to really do their vetting. They're going to talk to every teammate and every, what's the kid like, and get as much character and interview him a pile and stuff. But I think teams are going to be, he's a top 10 talent, and he'll probably end up going top 10 in the draft.
I completely agree. I mean, you look at the player, the hockey player himself. I apparently some people had him outside of the first round before this tournament, and now looking at what he can do, climbs up into the top 10 discussion. And before we get into your top 10, Grant, your early top 10, because the draft is still far away, I have one more player from the tournament that we both really liked, was Emil Hemming from Finland. I thought was fantastic. You had him in your list as well. Talk to me a bit about that guy. What can he become later on?
Well, I loved him going into the tournament, and actually NHL scouts that I talked to were a little disappointed. And he's close to the top 10 for me. Mm-hmm. I guess he had some good games and bad games was how it was described to me, but certainly there was good. And he's certainly in the mix for the top 10. Right now I've got him 10 to 15. Mm-hmm. And going in, he was highly touted, and he was the guy that actually maybe dropped a little bit because of the feedback I've got from NHL scouts, but I don't think he hurt his stock too much. He produced. You saw the flashes. You see the tools that make him a good NHL prospect, and I'll be keeping a close eye on him this year for sure.
That's it, a name to remember. So, without further ado, you have prepared for us a top 10, an early top 10, and we actually have the graphics that we can pull up here for our visual viewers. So here it is, Grant's early top 10. Let's break it down, Grant. Lay into this. Yeah,
well, as you can see, there weren't that many guys that played in the, that's it. There's quite a few that weren't at the Hlinka. So if you left like one scout was saying to me, it looks like a disappointing draft class, but if you ignore the guys that weren't there, sure. But I don't think it's a great draft class, but certainly there's some names on there that are pretty impressive. Yep. Celebrini is the obvious kid that had his breakthrough as far as the general public goes at the U18s last spring. He's going to Boston U, going to play with Lane Hudson this year, which won't hurt his draft stock either. They're going to be a dynamic duo to watch this year, and I suspect he'll put up really, point totals similar to what Fantilli did last year, and he'll be. He's what I like about him quite a bit. And I know I sent you guys a clip or two on him, just his competitive edge. And, he back checks with authority. He has a great motor. He finishes checks. He's got an all-around game in addition to being high-end skill and smart. So as far as I'm concerned, he's the whole package, and I'm really looking forward to watching him and Lane light it up this year at Boston U.
Completely agree. We look at the defenseman, right? Like, this has been touted as a defenseman-heavy draft, and contrary to last year's draft, right, this most recent one, where the general consensus was that Reinbacher was the best defenseman available, this year it's a bit all over the place, right? Some people think it's Adam Jiricek. Some people think it's Aaron Kiviharju, who's not even in your top 10. You have Sam Dickinson at number 4. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's an all-round defender. He played 20 minutes a game in London as a 16-year-old, which is unheard of. You know, even John Carlson didn't log that kind of ice time. Very poised, very smart. Didn't have, I don't think, a stellar Halenka, but all the scouts love him, and he's got great. Well, here he is, just showing his speed. You know, there's an example of. I mean, he's a 6'3" kid with wheels like that. That's a great defender. He's got some offense. He wore an A. Good leadership qualities. He's going to be London's go-to guy with Mayu gone this year, and be a 25 to 30 minute defenseman in London. And scouts also love the fact that a kid like that is going to be tutored by Dale Hunter over the next 2 years and only get better and smarter. They're a prospect factory in London, and that doesn't hurt his draft stock either.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. Now, a name that's interesting and could be concerning to some people is Ivan Demidov, right? Obviously Russian, plays for the same team as Matvei Michkov.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has committed to a team like Michkov has. Can you clarify that? Like, did he sign a contract with the team yet?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But,
so that concern is not quite there, but the talent level.
You look at Boot and all these guys are signed for years, and it didn't matter. They got picked high in the draft. You draft guys for 2 or 3 years down the road, typically. I'm not sure of his contract status, but he's better than Michkov as far as I'm concerned.
Ooh.
He's and I talked to a scout that's connected to Russia that told me he's the real one.
Wow,
great kid, bigger, better, way better all around player. Look at that shot.
Oh,
no, he's something, and he's got a terrific shot. He just his style of play. He's not as big as Kovalev, but he does remind me a bit of Alexei Kovalev. Montreal fans wanted them to take a winger this past year, but I tell you, if they get a chance to draft that kid, they'll get over that in a hurry, wishing that they could take him, because he's just a fantastic prospect. Him and Yzerman, basically, you could flip them one way or the other right now for me. Every bit as skilled as Celebrini, I think, too. Just Celebrini's the center, and if you got equal skill, equal talent, or close to it, you give the edge to the centerman. But he's top of the draft for me as far as upside goes.
Yeah, and like you mentioned Cole Yzerman there. A lot of people, interchange the top 3, right? Some people have Demidov number 1, some people have Yzerman number 1, most people have Celebrini number 1. But this draft is completely different from this most recent draft where Connor Bedard was like eons ahead of everyone else. This one's closer, right? You can't really predict quite yet who's going to go first. closer to the draft probably have a pretty good idea. But what could make Cole Yzerman shoot up and potentially go first, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think he had 9 goals at the under 18s last year as an underage. Keeps making shots like that. He's like that was a and there's Cole Hudson feeding him.
Bing.
He's got a terrific one-timer, and he's a goal scorer. Now, I think he had 40 some last year with the under 17s. If he can put up goal numbers close to a certain Cole that plays for the Montreal Canadiens in his draft year, he there's no doubt that he'll be in the hunt for first overall. Yeah. I agree with that all 3 of those guys are certainly in the mix, and who knows, like Connolly, Dickinson, Catton, Urachek, all of these kids are really good prospects, and I don't think it is one of those drafts where there's not a consensus number one guy, and that excites me because you like to have that intrigue throughout the year if possible.
Exactly. I mean, with the Slavkovsky draft, we didn't know until the pick was made, right? So that's a lot of fun, a lot of intrigue. Memory is still fresh, right? We remember this most recent draft. There was a massive riser by the name of Simashev, who went to Arizona at number 6. Who do you think could potentially be this year's Simashev? Is there a guy that could just shoot up out of nowhere? You're like, whoa, didn't expect that one.
Well, I mean, it's August,
Mm-hmm.
Ask me that question in March,
Fair enough.
I mean, Väisänen, I don't know, I've got him higher than I think a lot of people. I've got Väisänen ahead of Kiviharju at this point, and I realize that's not the popular opinion, but and that can change. I mean, if Kiviharju plays in the Liga this year and shows that he can defend against pros at that age with his puck skills and feet and mobility, he could even be in the mix for first overall. It's just it's always neat that when there's not a consensus guy at first overall, where there's a possibility there's a guy that's not even in my top 10 right now that ends up being the first guy. So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Väisänen reminds me a little bit of Miro Heiskanen. Now there's a guy that a lot of independent scouts in particular did not have in the top 20 right up until March, April of his draft year. And he ended up going, pretty high, top 3. So I see a lot of comparisons between the two. He's not quite as big as Heiskanen, but just a beautiful skater, two-way defenseman, makes great outlet passes, steady, better defender than Kiviharju, and that's why I have him ahead. And put up good stats in Finnish junior. I looked at Heiskanen's stats as a 16-year-old playing in Finnish junior, and actually Väisänen had better stats. So at that age, he showed more offensive potential. If he grows another inch and keeps playing the way it's, unfortunately he broke his foot before the Helenka Gretzky, or I think we'd all be talking about how good this kid is. Flying a little bit under the radar because he missed the event, but he's kind of my, if you ask me for a sleeper or a pet prospect in the top 10 right now, would be that kid, and I hope he keeps showing what I saw in the games that I scouted on him last year.
Jeez, exciting comparison there. Miro Heiskanen is no chump. This guy can play. Before we move on into our weekly segment, risers and fallers, I want to touch on goalies real quick. No goalies in your top 10, which is normal. There usually isn't. But there's 3 goalies at this tournament that quite impressed me from the 2024 draft class. Carter George from Canada, Caleb Heil from the US, and Herman Liv from Sweden. Is one of those three like your top goalie? Who is your top goalie for this draft?
At this point, going to be quite honest with you, I haven't even scouted the goalies. I don't typically scout them a whole heck of a lot because I don't really know what, that's one area of expertise that I rely heavily on my friends in the scouting industry that scout in the NHL to give me feedback on that. Carter George is 5'11", so right off the bat, he's not going in the top 3 rounds, almost guaranteed. Yeah. He could have stood on his head and had a shutout every game, and it wouldn't matter. Yeah, he looked good, but he's 5'11", and unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. That it's like a NFL quarterback, could win the Heisman and go 14-0, 12-0 in the season. And if he's 5'10", 5'11", he's not going. It's not going in the first 2 rounds, But a nice looking mid-round prospect, I guess you could say. Heil had that one. I thought he started out well, and then got pulled in the big game. Was it against Canada that he got pulled? Anyways. He hot and cold, like a lot of goalie prospects. None of them are huge, I don't think, and that always hurts. I don't think there's any first round goalies in this draft class. It looks like a weaker overall class than last year, but that's with me. There's so many skaters to look at the Hlinka that I really concentrate on them, and then during the season, as goalies get identified, like I rely on Central Scouting helping me out on that. That's part of their job to identify players to watch. Then I'll have a look at goalies more closely as the season goes along. But in these all-star tournaments where there's so many prospects to look at, the last thing, honestly, that I get that I pay attention to, unless it's a Wallstedt or a Askarov that just blows you away, the last thing I scout are the goalies. So why don't you send me your notes on those guys, and I'll take them into it. I'll take that into account, because it sounds like you spent a little more time on them than I did.
Not particularly. I mean, they stood out, right? But I like talking goalies. I wasn't a goalie myself. I was a defenseman, but okay. I think goalie prospects are always interesting because you get steals, right? Like guys like Vasilevsky goes far. Hellebuck goes far. Like these guys Absolutely. In redrafts usually go into the top 5. So that's why I like to talk goalie prospects. They're always interesting. But You're right. This tournament didn't really show like excellent goaltending, right? These are the 3 guys that most stood out to me, but can't really say that they are like first round level talent. And what you mentioned in size too. I mean, the only smaller goalie I can think of right now that is elite is UC Saros, who is like 5'10", 5'11", I think. Otherwise, like you said, like these guys are monsters. They need to be huge. So that's another big factor to take into consideration. Before we move on into your segment, did you have anything else to add about your list, the tournament, all that?
No, I think you covered it all. Great job.
Let's do it then. Risers, fallers, and prospect of the week. Lay it on us, Grant. Who is it?
You want the prospect of the week first, or
your call?
Okay, well,
it's your segment, baby.
So, okay. Well, we'll start with the riser. We'll do riser, faller, top prospect, I guess would be. For me, Caden Lindstrom was the guy. You just love the whole package with the kid. Play center, 2-way, good forechecker, excellent skater, hits with authority. made some really, I thought, smart plays and passes throughout the tournament. Didn't put up a lot of points, but that's okay. I wasn't asked to play an offensive role per se. Great on the cycle. That was a heavy line that he played on, and they created havoc, I thought, throughout the tournament. But 6'4" center with his size and mobility scored just a wonderful goal there that I'd like to see. Hopefully, do we have the clip of that? Yeah. Now this was when the Czechs were up 1-0, right? And Canada wasn't doing anything really, and that was just such a key goal and nice hands.
Yeah. Good control.
He scored 19 goals as a 16-year-old, which is pretty impressive. I was looking at Nate Danielson, who went top 10. A center from the WHL. What did he look like in his underage year? He scored 23, I believe. Just a few more goals than this kid did. And he's 6'1", Lidstrom's 6'4". Lidstrom's got more of an edge and a better skater. And Danielson was a late birthday. Well, Lidstrom, is not. So, I mean, teams are always coveting that big center that with top 2 center upside. And I'll really be keeping a close eye on this kid, because if he had 42 points last year, if he hits 70 plus with all of the tools that he has in his toolbox there, I think he'll be a slam dunk top 10 guy, and he might even be a top 5 prospect.
Wow. Well, I saw that he made your top 10 list that you made.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's early, but I asked some NHL scouts if they were seeing the same thing as me, and they said, well, he certainly, the package is there if he puts it all together this year. So be keeping a really close eye on him. I think he's one of the kids that has the potential to be a top 3 pick in the draft if everything comes together this year for him. So he's exciting.
Wow.
Faller, it's sorry, what did I send you the list on that?
You said Alexander Zetterberg.
Yeah. Well, he was pretty highly touted. There was another kid I was thinking of, but I think there'll be some weeks when I have a riser and faller that necessarily it didn't have much to do with the week that they played, because I'll be scouting these guys on video as I go along. The Lev Shunov kid, I want to mention him. I've seen a lot of lists where he's top 5, and he'd be the other guy that, based on what the video that I watched on him in the past week, trying to formulate my top 10. There's a lot of questions with his defense. He gets caught up ice a lot. He doesn't read the play very well, and it tends to be a bit of a rover. Also not sure about his pivots and his skating overall, but certainly 42 points, I think, as an underage in the USHL, 6'2" right defenseman. I get it why a lot of people tout him. If you look just at strictly at the numbers, they're 6'2", got the size, got the points, got the power play. So, but I mean, I'm old school when it comes to defensemen. You got to be able to defend. You're going to play 20 minutes, even strength. You have to be able to take care of your own end. And I've got concerns with him, so I put him at the end of my top 10, which makes him a faller. But I thought I better go with somebody that was at the tournament itself. And Zetterberg didn't look too bad in the first game, I thought, but didn't accomplish a heck of a lot after that. He was kind of invisible. For a smaller kid that is going to have to convince scouts that he'll go to the inside and compete. And I mean, when you're his size, you have to show competitiveness and not play a perimeter game, or you're never going to make a top 6 role in the NHL. And I can't say that I necessarily saw that from him in the tournament. He was on the outside a lot, didn't produce like I'd hoped either, all things considered, because he put up really good point totals last year for his age. And you see him top 10, top 20 on a lot of lists. And for me, at this point, at least, he didn't look like a first round guy. So as far as I'm concerned, he's a faller. And, he'll have all year to change my mind on that. So that's certainly not etched in stone by any means. But I was disappointed with his Hlinka overall.
Fair enough. And prospect of the week, guy we've talked about already, but worth talking about again.
Yeah. Well, captain of the gold medal winning team of the at the Hlinka, Berkeley Catton, put up the points, scored big goals. Like he's got a great shot, as you see in these clips. This one I like, where he he dangled and showed his he's got great feet, great edges, and great finish.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he played an all-around game. He's a quick twitch muscle kid, he's really quick. And I mean, there's 4 beautiful goals that he scored at the Hlinka right there. You got to give it to him. He's as far as I'm concerned, he's the hands down the top prospect performer of the week.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Grant, before we wrap up, anything else you need to touch on?
Absolutely not.
Fantastic. Then
great job there, producer Shane, for your first. How'd you get that name? You got a lot of offspring, or why did they call you producer?
None, as far as I know. Hopefully not. But no, I usually produce Tony Marinaro's show.
Of course.
I am in front of the camera instead. So I'm still producer Shane. You could call me Shane. You could call me whatever you want, as long as it's nice. I'll take it. But Grant, thank you. I mean, first episode in the books. Thank you for watching. Tune in next week, because we're back. We're talking prospects again. All right. Don't miss it. See you then.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, Recruits Draftcast on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.